AI surpassing human intelligence in all domains is a distinct possibility, says ChatGPT. This could lead to either a utopia of abundance or significant societal shifts. Interesting that ChatGPT calls that a utopia.
Welcome to Think Tank with Karan Menon, a show by and for people who do not know things. It's me, Karan Menon, your host, a writer, comedian, but also, and this isn't talked about enough, a simple man searching for answers. On each episode of Think Tank, we invite two people, experts from literally any field, to come together with me as a team to answer just one question. That's the only goal here. Just put our heads together to answer one question about something relevant to the world. And we, including myself, are not going to know this question until it's delivered to us in the episode. So the point is not to be prepared or to know everything. The point is to become comfortable with that experience of trying to figure out what you think with your friends when you don't necessarily have all the answers. So sometimes we're going to know things, sometimes we're not going to know things, but we're trying our best with the experiences we have. So we'll start off getting to know each other, then the question will drop and we'll put our heads together to answer that. And then at the end, we'll take you through some of the facts people said and a summary of how true they actually were, a vibe check, if you will. Think Tank is a Citizens Create project made possible by equal citizens. For more information, please visit www.citizenscreate.us. On this week's episode, I am joined by Hannah Jones, a comedian, and Punya Chatterjee, a filmmaker and designer. And now, let us enter the tank.
Hannah, you are an expert, it says here, at estate sales and the dramatic works of Nancy Meyers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Expand on that. First of all, who is Nancy Meyers?
Nancy Meyers is a director who famously is able to create a world primarily targeted at older women. And it's like, think Hamptons, think beautiful homes, think Father of the Bride, think It's Complicated, think Parent Trap. So she made all of these, and she's famous for the homes themselves, but she just makes these movies that there's something about them that they're so sticky. They're just like stick in your mind, and they're so aesthetic, and they make you laugh and they make you think. Kind of, but they're just deeply, deeply fun, and I'm obsessed with them.
That's amazing. I actually haven't seen any of those movies you're talking about. Parent Trap, It's Complicated, Father of the Bride. So
I've got a long list, and I'll queue it up for you.
Please, yeah, actually. And then estate sales. I guess that kind of ties into the Nancy Meyers.
I've gotten a lot of like antiques and decor photo. I have a giant, like 4-foot long portrait of a ship.
That's actually incredible.
That's incredible.
So where does that hang?
Above my bed. Yeah.
To like send you on a voyage of dreams.
Yeah,
maybe.
I would say so. Mm-hmm. I think you look at it, interpret as you may.
Okay.
But there's a ship kind of in the space, a very large ship.
Okay. That's beautiful. Punya, talk to me. You're an expert in, you says here, motion design / 3D animation / VFX.
Yes.
That's a lot to put under two slashes, three things.
Yeah, now that I hear expert too, I'm like, is expert the right word? But we'll go with it.
You do this professionally?
I guess I have gotten paid to do it, but I'm still not. There's so much better I could be at it.
Yeah. What got you into that?
I think it just it's kind of stumbled into it because it was like the combination of like I studied computer science in school, but then always I had like a lot of filmmaking background and like would do a lot of editing my own videos and kind of having to do all like the design for it as well, like making the banners, making the posters, making all of the like visuals for it. So I think I just was a huge nerd for like Photoshop and After Effects and stuff like that. So then once I was working in tech, I was like, well, how can I like use my design skills and like my creative skills more to not just be doing like just the pure codey kind of tech stuff?
What have you, well, actually, I know something you have done VFX for. Punya directed a movie, speaking of period and stuff. Punya directed a period piece that I was lucky enough to work on as well, set in the 60s in San Francisco. So maybe you can talk about that and what that was like recreating a time of the old.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge. Making a period piece for a short film is not something I could really recommend to a lot of people because it's just so much stuff that you have to worry about. We were super lucky. We had an amazing production designer, Manole Jain, who was like coming in with like a lot of experience on like bigger sets and like knew exactly what to do to like bring in a whole desk for like a fake talk show, to like bring in all of the different props that were needed to sell like a 60s garage with all of the like various decorations. So it was like a combo of that, finding the right locations. Definitely, I think we didn't pay as much attention to like making sure people sounded kind of 60s. We were like, let's just let it be modern
Yeah.
because we wanted it to still feel relevant today.
Like, he dressed us up in like cool outfits, and it was really cool. I felt like I was there. I felt
I
like I
need
was
you to
there.
send it to me.
Oh, yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
I'm bought in. Mm.
So I'll just say that. General question. Where do you guys see us in 2026?
Well,
What do you think where do you think things are headed if you just had to kind of give the rough outline of it and be as optimistic or pessimistic as you would like?
January 2025
Yeah.
was a
about it.
punishing year.
Yeah.
So it's hard to think forward in a year. I think maybe the oligarchy is going to be popping off. But I also think people just being like standing up, against that will also be coming forth. I think there's a real political shift going on. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the people that roll with it and the people that stand up against it.
Mm-hmm. Takes some courage maybe to stand up against it.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've had to find that courage in the past month, or is it kind of like lay low for a second?
I think both. I mean, I'm from the South, and a lot of my family are all Republicans, and so I think having those conversations with them, I think also having our own reckoning with everything politically that's going on, and also like the fires in LA and like all the bills that are being passed. I think it's just a lot. So it's trying to find that middle ground of tapping in. I need to be aware, but I also need to function like day to day and go to work and sell and, all that. It's been, I don't know. It's a heavy load, but I think you just kind of have to show up and figure out how to navigate it.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like there's a lot happening, but you have to make sure that you are surviving first before you can start to even navigate. And how do you feel about that? Punya, you?
About kind of figuring yourself out before having to navigate like the bigger picture, or
or even just this past month, January 2025. How are you feeling coming out of it?
Yeah, good question. I'm very unsure. I feel like I'm having to like just like sit back and watch and just like learn what's going on with other people more so. That like I used to maybe feel like I had a general sense of how like a lot of people worked, or on a mass scale, like what do people in America want, what do people in our generation want, and it's like just a lot of like shaken up. Like I had no idea until recently like how much of a conservative like growing group there is in Gen Z itself. I used to kind of take for granted like, oh yeah, most Gen Z like probably liberal like kind of vibe. So that's been interesting to see like, oh, like what are people actually versus like what do they represent themselves as. But yeah, I feel like my theory is just like there's always like kind of a pendulum swing that happens, and this is definitely not an original idea, but like I feel like things go in one direction and then kind of overcorrect into the other direction and then overcorrect back, and maybe we're in just one of those kind of fluctuation points. So it's hard to say. I would like to believe that things will be worse, but things will not be as bad as many of us might fear. Is my optimistic take on it. Semi-optimistic, yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I also was definitely kind of like shaken up by what happened. I guess like it wasn't surprising to me that like it went the way it did, but it was surprising to me to learn, like you're saying, like how many Gen Z like young men, because I guess I'm a Gen Z young man and I'm not conservative, and I thought that was what it was. And so you realize like you're in like kind of a bubble, or you're in the minority a little bit. And that was a weird feeling to like learn you're in a bubble. I guess like living in LA, we are definitely in a bubble. So it's just like a lot will have to be a lot of learning, a lot of like figuring stuff out. And that's kind of what this podcast is for too. Cause I'm like, I think that part of the problem was I assumed I knew what was happening based off of what I was reading on my phone. But that is such a specific version of reality. And everybody's getting their own like version of reality. So it's kind of like, yeah.
Well, and I think that so much of the rancor, it's like, if you are this, then you're inherently wrong, you're inherently ignorant or whatever it is. And I think that is seen on both sides.
Yeah.
But I think the most productive conversations are when you show up with someone who you might disagree with and you just listen
Mm-hmm.
and see where they're coming from. And like, okay, maybe we won't agree, but I think at the end of it, you maybe have a better understanding of where they're coming from. Because I think the divisiveness of the current landscape comes from nobody listening to the other side. And of course, there are some things that are just objectively not good. But I think just listening and finding that there's maybe more middle ground than we realize. And I think maybe that's the path forward.
Yeah. Have you guys had to have like, or can you think of like a conversation you've had where you've had to like talk to someone who believes like the opposite of you and what that was like?
I feel like I remember one time during the pandemic, I reposted something on my like story that was about like defunding the police, and someone like a friend of mine from back home replied being like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard," and I was like, "You want to explain why you think that?" And then kind of like went through it, and I was like, I didn't agree with his point at all, but it was interesting that he felt the need to like come at it so aggressively instead of just like I was trying to be like, okay, why do you think that way? But
Mhm.
it was just a lot of crying, laughing emojis. Like, you
Oh.
really think that way, bro? Like,
That is painful. That is painful. The comment war version of like trying to like debate something is very, very tough.
yeah.
Yeah. What about you? You said you have family members.
Yeah, I think probably with my dad.
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Oh, let's hear it. Oh, I should have taught you more, taught you better." And I'm like, first off, base level, I'm hard-headed like you're hard-headed, but also he gets heated just like that.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, this and this and this. And I'm like, I'll have this conversation with you. And I think this conversation is like a good thing. But if you're coming at it just like that, I think it's not productive. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you can just talk to me and have a conversation, I could see where you're coming from. And so I think it's always like, I'm not like, let's just actually have a conversation. And then once I do that, he kind of backs off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's happened a billion times.
Yeah.
But it's just always being like, I would love to have this conversation. And if it's productive, let's keep doing it. And if it's not, my mom's like, mm-mm. She's not home that much. Just don't talk about it. But yeah, just making sure that the conversation is a conversation. It's not a condemnation of anyone.
Attention tank. The question has arrived.
Oh, that was almost so good. Oh,
Tree leaning?
oh, there we go. The bush is back. Oh,
Nice.
We have our question in today for the episode. Hannah Punya. Oh, there's a lot of words on this one. AI. What's your take? Should it be regulated by government? Should ads, movies, music, these are all ads / movies / music / creative have to disclose when they're using AI? And if no or yes, pitch the vision you have for where this is going. So there's a lot of questions on this card. And that was very overwhelming to read.
Read it back one more time.
We're going to read it back one more time.
Yep.
AI, what is your take? Meaning our take. Should it be regulated by government? And should creative mediums that use AI, like ads, movies, music, creative stuff, have to disclose when they use AI? And depending on the answer, what is our vision for that? So we'll start with what's your take? AI. How are we feeling right now?
Yeah, mixed feelings. I'm both scared of it and a little excited about it, but I'm more
Yeah.
scared of how we do regulate it and things like that.
Yeah.
It's funny you asked this because in your earlier question about like where do we think things will go in 2026,
Yeah.
I don't have much of a sense on anything. The one thing that I do feel is that I'm like, oh man, we're never gonna get AI regulated, are we? Like, that's my pessimistic view on it. Is especially with the administration now, is like just the chance that there will be people in government that understand this thing well enough and really take a moment to get what specifically is needed and what can be regulated, what is beyond the scope of regulation. I just don't think that's going to happen. We're in an era where like 2 years ago, like people were asking Mark Zuckerberg, like, how does Facebook make money, like off of ads? And then like a congressman not understanding how like TikTok works. Like it's like that level of government is where we're at, that I can't even, I mean, like regular smart people I see like struggling with the concept of AI. And I just don't know if we'll get enough people that know enough about it to also let them convince the public that like, oh, we should regulate it this way. It just seems like a major communication issue. And with anything that is so technical, it's often the people that are very technical knowledgeable, in this case the people running these AI companies like OpenAI, are going to kind of just keep doing what they can do in the shadows, while the rest of us are like scratching our heads and like talking to each other about like, oh, we got to do something about this. That's what I fear would happen, like if we don't have people that are kind of a little bit knowledgeable about this stuff. It's just that it'll be like social media. Like everyone, I'm sure, talked about regulating social media for a long time, and it did get regulated maybe a little bit with some kind of like community guidelines and things like that. But it's still very much like the Wild Wild West, and it just kind of ballooned at a rate that no one could keep up with. I worry about that with AI, and I think it is a very useful tool in a lot of cases, but also very easily people will use it to replace others and to drive down labor costs. And when it can reduce costs for companies, like I don't trust companies to not go with the cost reducing thing. So I think like we as people need to like push back against use of AI, but it's hard because many of us also benefit from AI. So it's just kind of like a runaway train at that point. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah.
That was okay. You covered a lot there. So clearly you do use AI in what you do.
Like, so in that example I was using, that one's not generative AI, which I'm like, so people kind of conflate generative AI with AI, and I also just made that mistake of kind of just using general AI.
Okay, I have questions about that too, because I don't know a lot of things about AI.
I'll say I'll like play around with generative AI, but I personally choose not to like put work out that is generative AI as my own work.
Okay.
I might use it to like help conceptualize something, or to fill in like a background detail that I know no one's going to care about, or that it's not worth like paying a lot of attention to on a low scale. But I wouldn't use it on anything that I'm saying like this is my creative output.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I have a few questions, but first of all, generative AI versus AI. Do you know what that is, Hannah?
No.
I would say like most of the AI people have been talking about in the last 2-3 years is generative AI. So ChatGPT is generative text, like Midjourney and DALL-E are generative images. Runway ML is generative video. So it's all stuff that's like, it's creating a brand new piece of content or something.
Okay.
From nothing.
What would the other kind of AI be?
The other kind of AI is more like, it's used in a lot more things. It's more like, I'll say AI overall is just it's a really good probability machine, essentially. And that could be like normal AI is used in like, let's say, like this new thing on like iPhones or whatever. It's like, if every day at 9 a.m. you go and get coffee from this one coffee shop, then at the end of the week, your phone might give you a notification at 9 a.m. saying, hey, do you want directions to this coffee shop?
Oh yeah, that happens.
That's because it like picked up on a very obvious pattern. And it's like, oh, chances are, because 6 out of 7 of the last days you went to this coffee shop, you probably want to go again.
Okay.
That's like the most super like rudimentary version of AI.
That's a basic AI.
Yeah. So it's like the version that I described of like rotoscoping and cutting someone out. That one's more of like a regular use of AI. Or when Spotify or Netflix or TikTok gives you a recommended song or video or movie or something.
My day list.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's regular AI.
Regular AI.
Yeah.
And generative is used by creatives mainly, or like when people are trying to write, like ChatGPT is generative because it's writing something new for you.
Yeah, it's like,
Okay.
I'll say like regular AI helps make decisions. Or like it's almost like it'll you can ask it a question, it'll give you like a yes or no, or it'll like classify something as like if you've seen Silicon Valley, it's like you could give it an image of food and it'll say hot dog or not hot dog.
Yeah.
That's all it can do. Whereas generative AI will create a new thing for you, essentially. A quote unquote new thing.
Okay.
It's still very much relying on the probability of all these other things. Like if I like if I say like generate a picture of a horse, it knows like, okay, here's an eyeball. It knows like there's a high probability that a snout comes right out of it there, so it can like kind of create that.
Okay.
But I also have kind of a not very good understanding of generative AI.
Okay.
But AI is like way more commonly used, normal AI, in a way that I think like I see people being like, we need to take down all AI, and I'm like, that's straight up just not going to happen. Like Photoshop content aware fill is a thing like that's existed since like the late 2000s or like early 2010s, but that's like people weren't really up in arms about that because that's more like a tool. It's not creating something.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of take a deep breath
Yeah.
after everything you've said.
I dropped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really impressive.
That was amazing.
That was incredible.
That was so cool. Like that itself might be the episode. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is there are some kinds of AI that are very like embedded in our day-to-day life. There are other kinds of AI that there's multiple types of AI to varying degrees of being like embedded in our lives. And some of it is like needs to be regulated, or some of it you think can't be regulated. But there's kind of like, it's just like we're at a place now where we've maybe passed the threshold of like, if we were going to regulate it.
I think it's such a hard thing to define that even I literally work in tech and I still am not very good at describing what is AI, what is not, what is the line between generative AI and that, to where I'm like, if I'm having such a difficult time talking about it, then most people who don't care about tech as much or don't want to learn as much, like, it's like how are we going to have people like in government that wouldn't know about these things regulate like what is AI, what's not? Like
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say like I don't want to lose my rotoscope tool, my little like AI tool or something. But at this, or I don't want to lose like predictive text when I'm like typing or something where like maybe it can like figure out. I don't have to type the whole YouTube search term. It can like fill in the rest of the word.
Yeah.
That's an example of AI. That I think is like that barrier might have already been crossed of regular AI. It's so widespread across everything we use that like I just don't know how we'd regulate that. Generative, I still think there's a hope for it. I think like the way that like even like it's not big bounds, but like what came out of like the SAG strike and the WGA negotiations, like those did like come up with good limits, I think, but they still won't prevent people from misusing AI, of course.
Hannah, from what Punya is saying, is there anything that you connect with there? Does AI, where does AI play a role in your life as someone who maybe is not in the tech world?
Yeah, I would say objectively, that was incredible. I know so much less in that space, and I don't think that's a bad thing. That was really cool to hear your take on it, because I didn't even think of so many of those things as AI, like predictive text, or you're on Google, you're on YouTube, it's filling in the rest, or my Apple Maps, even though I've never plugged in directions to a place, but it's Thursday night and it goes, well, you're headed this way, right? Or it's Tuesday night. It's like, well, you're going here for this show. And I was like, oh, that's convenient. Someone's been paying attention, but obviously that's AI tracking what I do. And I was like, I didn't even know she was here in the chat. I have so many people who now are, and one of my bosses is so plugged in on AI, which I'm sure to a point, and optimizing everything. So writing emails, scheduling, building out like how a day should go and how it's most efficient and who should be doing what when. And so I see that a lot. My cousin even, she's like, it builds out my schedule. It builds out my emails. It builds out just like everything that she does in a way that I was like, I didn't even think of ways to use it. And I think I keep hearing different ways that people are using it. And I remember when AI really started to get steam and everyone's talking about it more, and it's like, well, it needs to be regulated. It needs to be regulated. And honestly, as someone who's not in the space that you were in, I'm like, well, of course it needs to be regulated. And I'm like, as I say all that, I don't know what actual like boots on the ground regulation looks like. I think there are parts of AI that obviously can optimize your day, can optimize like how you show up in your life, or even something as simple as I'm going to Trader Joe's. Here's my budget. I want XYZ, and they'll like fully build that out. So I think things like that are harmless, and maybe they're less harmless than I know them to be. I think the part that gets dangerous, and I can't remember the two types of AI you described, but the one where people are like selling the rights to their likeness and their
Oh,
voice. And so maybe it's an older actor who has passed or is about to pass, and they sell off their likeness, and then that, I guess, AI, not ghost, but I'm going to call it a ghost, certainly, is appearing in a movie, a show, whatever it is. And I think while it's like, wow, that's incredible, how cool, I think there's a danger to that. I think it's probably keeping some actors and performers out of the space because they're just going to keep using the ghost because they paid a lump sum and now they can pull on that whenever they want.
yeah.
I mean, obviously it's an incredible tool, but I think it's an incredible tool that needs to be kept within parameters.
Definitely, definitely. I like a lot of what you were saying. First of all, I do agree. I think we are in one boat, and I think Punya's in another boat in terms of like the knowledge. And you were mentioning that there's like this knowledge gap, right, between the people who know things and then the other people who maybe it'll take them a few years to catch up. Like, and that gap is
And
kind of
us.
right here. Yeah, yeah.
Us guessing.
Yeah. And like my brother, he also majored in computer science. He graduated recently. And he's not working in computer science now, but he has friends who have like really gone down that path. And he came to me like he pulled me aside like at the end of this last year, and he was like, you need to like restructure your life. Like you need to like use ChatGPT anywhere where you think you would use Google. He was like you should do this because it's gonna make your life way easier. He was like kind of like an intervention of AI, but he was like, he's like, I promise you, like he's like, think of just anytime you're about to Google something, think, could I ChatGPT this? And his reasoning for that was like, there's certain things that work for that. Like let's say you wanted to like look up something that you would Wikipedia on Google. ChatGPT might be more helpful than Wikipedia because it'll pull on like, so it's like fact-based stuff, anything that's like how to, like a step-by-step, ChatGPT it. And I took his advice. I've been using ChatGPT instead of Google like for the past, like through all of January 2025, as rough as a month that was. I did get like some, I have built a habit around ChatGPT now. And mainly just because this guy, like my brother's younger than me, but he has like knowledge in that area. And I was like, I trust you. Kind of, I think there's a kind of like we're in a phase right now where everybody's starting to learn little ways you can use AI. And then maybe there's people way ahead who know all the ways already and know ways that it's embedded in our lives that the kind of everyday person doesn't know yet. So there's that. And then you were mentioning that there's this kind of gap, like the people who are in power, who know how things are run. There needs to be some communication of that. And then I'm wondering, who are those people exactly? Like what is the spectrum of people who know about AI versus not? Who are the people in power? What is happening?
That's a good question. I wish I knew the answer. I've always wondered the same thing. Outside of AI in general, just about tech regulation overall. And again, I think like the TikTok and like Facebook, like the Congress hearings, like all of that, like made me think about it. Is like, it's such a bummer that like there are people that are making decisions about how like technology affects us and like what technology companies can do, but then they themselves are trying to play catch up while they're like making the legislation about it. And I wish I had a solution. Literally one thought I had once was like, oh, it'd be nice if people that were veterans in technology that understand the technical sides of these things later in their careers like worked for the government and were able to like, if not be in Congress, at least be consultants to the government essentially in order to like really help them make informed decisions. But then the cynical part of me is like, oh, well, so much of technology is based on just so many people go into tech because of the money. And simply put, like public sector just cannot pay as much as like these tech companies that are going to go like pay you insane amounts, especially for a veteran like engineer or someone like that, that it's almost like, would you even really be able to get those people that have the proper requisite experience to work for the government to be able to like help them out? I would like to believe we could. I'd like to believe that like these kinds of experts like I feel like there was once an effort made for like some government organization to be made to be specifically in charge of things for like regulating technology and regulating like internet usage and things like that. But I don't think it ever came to fruition, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure exactly what challenges stand in that way. But that's really the only potential thing that I can think of. But even then, even if you were to get those, it's like then you'd need people to listen to them as well, and for people to agree on what they're hearing from them. And
Yeah.
that is just a very hard thing that I think people would want to understand it themselves, and without understanding it themselves, they might not go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it's not just understanding because there is not one platform that people are listening to. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we need to get this message out. It's going to be like nipped and tucked and pulled and prodded in different ways depending on the source. And even when all those sources are sounding off, some people will never hear that. They don't want to tune in. They're like, it's above my pay grade. I'm not going to use it. I don't need to know.
Yeah.
So I think finding ways that you can get that actual message out to everyone, just like you said, and get people to care enough to be like, this is something I need to be educated on. I think that is a big part of the battle, even outside of, like, let's say there's just some altruistic tech giants who are like, I'll take the pay cut. I just think society needs to know these things. How does the message get out? And how does a message not scare people, but inform them of the realities of AI and where it already is and where it could go, both for good and bad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, in that way, I feel like there's like maybe a similar comparison to like climate change. And like, I mean, scientists have been warning us for decades now about climate change, trying to get the government to really take it seriously and to implement changes. But it's now become a thing where like, yeah, we all know climate change is happening. We all know we should do something about it. But then there's just not much of an urgency we're seeing on the like large government scale.
Yeah.
That I hope that doesn't become the path that it becomes with like tech regulation.
Yeah, yeah. And I do agree what you're saying that like even if you do try to maybe I mean like if it was that hard for climate change to get to people when there wasn't such a fragmentation of like communication like news sources, now it's like crazy to I don't even know how someone in power can get a message like one message down to the people because it does like you're saying like people on one social media platform or one side of politics will hear that construed version of what the message is. People here will learn this, and some just to even get people on the same page about anything these days feels very difficult to begin with. And then to get people on the same page about whether to regulate AI, it might be like way too late by the time you do. I guess okay. Let's get back to this Let's make sure we're like
Yeah.
because I love what we're doing here and we're getting on the same page, which we did say was important for teamwork. So the questions we have basically that was our take kind of overall. Now we're saying should it be regulated, and then specifically in the creative department when they use AI, should they have to disclose? And we did kind of touch on that with the kind of using people's AI likenesses. So there's the regulation, and then there's also the kind of maybe we can move away from the regulation for a second and just talk about the disclosing in the creative field. That's specific because you both are in the creative field as well, and have probably encountered some form of that, or even conversations about that. So personally, I think if you use AI in like your movie or your music, well, music is interesting because I feel like I don't really care how people made their music, you know, but also should I care? I don't know. I feel like with movies, if you are like replacing an actor, you should definitely disclose that. Like, I think that makes sense to me. What are my reasons for that? I don't know. I'm just saying that it feels right. Yeah. What do you guys think? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in an interesting place with it, and I'll disclose my use of AI in this our short film that we made together. In that, it's this '60s period piece. It was fully self-funded, and it's like my first legitimate short film. So it's like my ass was on the line to make it essentially, and I needed to save costs wherever was possible. And I wanted to make sure that everyone that was there and actually helping on set and helping with the project, that they were properly compensated and got what they wanted out of it. There was one scene, you remember the garage scene, where we needed a bunch of posters in the background of it. A bunch of like band posters that should look like 60s psychedelic posters that kind of rip off Indian art, because that's what the short film is related to. And I was thinking like, okay, on this indie short film, no chance I'll be able to actually clear 60s posters. That's what I would ideally be using, is real 60s posters, but I don't have any of the resources to be able to get that. I also can't justify paying a actual illustrator or designer to make these posters, because the illustration styles are very in-depth. Like, they would take a lot of time to make. And I also, like, I do a little bit of design myself. So it's like, I don't want to way underpay a designer just to have them make so much work to then be in the back of a frame, out of focus. Maybe we wouldn't even see it. In most of the clips, like, the actors are covering the posters. So for that, I was like, I would almost actually feel bad, like, getting an actual artist to put in their hard work in order to put into this thing. Plus, I don't have the funds to do it. So for that, I ended up using AI to make a couple of passes at like assets for posters. So in the end, all of the posters were a combo of a little bit of generative AI, putting them together with some actual images that were like manually photoshopped together, put it together with my art director and like put titles over it ourselves. So there was custom work, like handwork done on all of them. But the generative AI helped me solve a lot of the issues of, I can't take this actual, like, the Jimi Hendrix Axis Bold as Love cover, if you've seen it. It's like a Hindu art, like a Hindu piece of like classical art or whatever, with Jimi Hendrix and the band's like faces pasted over it. I was like, okay, I want a poster that evokes that, but I don't have the rights to that. Why don't I just take the Jimi Hendrix poster, take an actual old piece of like public domain, like Indian Hindu art, and then tell generative AI blend these. And it created something that was close enough, gave the vibe of it, and then I did a lot of Photoshop work on top of it. But that's why, I felt kind of like mixed feelings about it once like the short played at festivals and stuff, and no one's had an issue with it. And again, the posters are very hard to notice; they're truly background pieces. But I did have to like think about, like, I now have AI in my film, and like, am I proud of that? Does it cheapen the whole thing? My take on it for that project specifically is no, it doesn't, because I was taking posters that were already, in my view, like cultural ripoffs. So
Yeah,
I'm making cultural ripoffs of someone's cultural ripoff to comment on their original cultural ripoff. That's like a gray area that I'm okay with.
That's
being
justice.
Like, that's justice. Yeah, justice with generative AI. Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna find someone to make fake ripoff stuff. So that's one, but I could see someone also not liking that use of it. And I've seen movies that have come out that have been under fire for like using like AI posters. That one I feel like less is me saying this. I'm less sympathetic to that, because I'm like, well, you had hundreds and thousands of budget to use. Like, you could have paid someone. So it's like with AI, it's like it can help people at the very beginning stages get their creativity out there. I mean, the same way that like for you could, like, back in the day, you would have to hire a focus puller to film anything. And now, like, a lot of these cameras and like most cameras that consumers use nowadays have really good autofocus. They can have facial autofocus. But so that like is a major tool for any beginning creator. Like, I started making YouTube videos when I was in middle school. Like, I couldn't have gotten anywhere. Like, if I had to get a focus puller every time I was trying to make something, I needed autofocus.
Yeah, people are just kind of, you have limited teams and limited budgets, and AI can be very helpful in that way.
But then at the same time, like, if you're a major movie, like with millions of dollars, it's like, oh, well, now you could have paid a focus puller and now you've just removed a job. So that's where the like weird thing is to be a creative and be like, oh, I get this side, but I also get that side of it too.
Yeah.
Well, and I think on the side of, let's say someone started with smaller budget solutions like that, where you're like, this is something that I have to do to be able to get this made. But then, you know, as you're growing in that space and creating bigger things with bigger budgets, I wonder, and again, I don't know what the answer is, but as you grow, you're like, I know I can do this. And as that budget is growing, you're like, and if I'm not spending money there, where can I spend it? I think if you are tapping into, which I don't think is wrong, but like tapping into these resources and it becomes a part of how you're creating, I think you might stick with it, which I don't, again, like, yeah, you would, because it's a solution, it's a way to save money. But as I say all that, and you spoke to it as well, then is that someone not getting to have that job? So it's kind of hard to reckon with. And I think, thank God people were kind of striking against it, because they're like, you know what? I could get this entire thing edited in a day, probably an hour with AI, but it's like, how many people are losing their job? And also, there's something about a human person having their touch on it, having their point of view seen and heard. And I think there's a magic to that. So I think the parameters that you have to set up with it to make sure that you're not losing the creative magic of it all.
I like that. I like what you're saying about the human touch. Like, that is why I watch a movie, or like that is why I listen. It's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to connect with another person. I would like to know if I thought I was connecting with the person that's actually a robot, you know, or in certain elements, like in the way that you credit, like written by this person, like shot by this person. If you're like, that element, by the way, was done by not a person, I'll just be like, oh, okay, cool. Like just so I can know, you know.
It makes it less impressive. I think like part of what we connect to as with art is the fact that like, wow, a human being made this, or like some human beings came together and they made that. Like, I'm more impressed, like when I see a movie that I'm really impressed by, I'm impressed by the feat of like collaboration that was pulled off. I'm like, good for those people. Whereas like, I wouldn't feel that. It would feel like nothing if an AI like created something.
Yeah.
And I think there are things that AI more easily could replace versus can't replace. Like, I totally agree. Things that need a human touch should not be replaced by them.
Yeah.
I don't think it has any ability to do that. It only has, like I'm saying, like, I wish people viewed AI as like a probability machine. That's all it is. And it's never going to give you something that it's never seen before, that you've never seen before. It will only take pieces of what it's seen before and put something together. It has made me wonder about like, what is art, and like, what do we actually view as like good art, and how much of that is based on your ability to technically pull it off. And it's like, apparently like I've learned recently, like when photography first became a thing, you know, right before photography came out, people were really focused on very hyper realistic paintings. Like, being a really good painter was just painting something that looked true to real life, very well lit in the painting and everything. And after photography made that essentially such a given thing to just capture a scene realistically, then that's when a lot more of like expressionism, a lot more like different styles came out, and it became less about realism and more about creativity. I think a similar thing would happen, is like the bar for getting the technical stuff is lowering and lowering, which is, I would hope, increasing the importance of true, genuine human creativity to come up with the idea. Just that like the technical stuff that like someone would need millions of dollars to make a movie before, if you can take out a lot of the stuff that doesn't make it cost that much now, I don't know. But at the same time, it's like, those are people's jobs that were making it cost that much. So then it's like, it's an interesting question of like, as a creative, like, do you lean into like your technical skills, or do you just be like, oh, well, AI might eventually replace my technical skills, should I really just focus on my ideas, the stories, like the human connections, things like that? I don't know.
Well, let's see if we can come to a yes or no for just, should they have to disclose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. And even I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like thinking about those posters in the credits, just being like, posters featured, used creating AI. I think disclosing that. And I think also there's like fun ways to do it. Like, you could make Frank Sinatra sing like They Not Like Us or whatever. Like, you can do that. And he sounds fantastic. It's actually really, I recommend if you haven't gotten in there. It's good.
He's doing They Not Like Us right now?
You could, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You can get him to do whatever you want. But yeah, I think disclosing it, I think having parameters on that is important and impactful. And then just disclosing. And if people have a problem with that, I think that there's there's an underlying issue there too if you're not willing to admit
If you have a
that
problem
AI
with
was
this,
used.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you think it's a problem to let people know, then you are more concerned about the money, really.
Mhm.
I mean, that's basically who, yeah, the people who are trying to make the money off of this are the people who don't want you to know that AI was used. And so it's weird.
I am curious for your thoughts on the flip side, though, which is because I've been thinking too about like, yeah, why would someone not disclose use of AI? And I've seen a similar thing with some movies not disclosing their use of CGI. I've seen
Oh.
with that Napoleon movie, there was like a statement from like the director Ridley Scott that was like, "Oh yeah, and for this battle in the snow, we didn't use CG, or like we really went out and shot this." And then some VFX artist later like did a like report on it, and it was like, no, there was a lot of CGI used in that. They used so much crowd replacement, and I was like thinking about that. I was like, why would they hide that? And I like almost empathize with that side of like of why they were doing it, which is like they wanted to like the director wanted it to be clear that they actually did have hundreds of people go out into the snow and do a fake battle.
Yeah.
Now they used VFX to turn those hundreds of people into thousands.
Yeah.
But they did still go out and shoot it. And I think maybe their fear was that by hearing, oh, they used CGI on that scene, people would be like, oh, the whole thing's CGI.
There
Like,
was,
the
like,
whole
one
thing is
guy
fake.
on the
They didn't go
field.
do it. The
Yeah.
whole thing might as well be virtual. And so then it over discredits it because people have their notions of like, oh, this is CGI, this is fake, this is AI. To the point where like I've seen people even label like I'll see really good 3D animators post their work on TikTok and people will be like, this is AI. And I'm like, bro, like no, they spent hours and hours, like maybe days doing that to make it look good. But
all it takes is one comment to
Yeah.
destroy your
Yeah.
entire sense of self.
exactly, but it's like, yeah, but like I could maybe see people being afraid to disclose AI and like discrediting all that they did bring to it
Yeah.
in people's assumption that the entire thing is fully generated.
That's so
hard.
interesting. I feel like we've gone some interesting places. Let's see as a tank if we can answer these questions with as in unison as we can.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to speak at the same time, but should it be regulated by the government? We said yes.
Yeah.
Should ads, movies, music have to disclose? We said yes.
Yes.
That it said now it says if yes, pitch your vision for that. So then obviously the how of disclosing is kind of where we're in a kind of like gray area right now.
Yeah, and my asterisk to it is like I think generative AI should be disclosed.
Generative AI.
Overall AI, I just think people will not even realize that they're using AI and not mark it. That's why I don't think it's
Yeah.
like worth marking it. Like,
you mean like when you get like your Google Maps tells you
yeah, like
you don't
people's
need to know.
favorite AI of all time is the TikTok algorithm. That's like maybe the best example of a AI that people loved. People are like, oh, For You page knows me so well. Like I built my For You page brick by brick. Well, it's like literally you did because you're like when I got cats, I like started like probably liking more videos of cats on TikTok. And now, if you go through my feed, like it's like 50% cats because it just knew, it just figured it out by probability. It's a probability machine. So it's like that kind of AI. People might not label that as AI. So it gets hard to label any kind of AI. But I think the examples of generative AI are pretty clear. You give it a prompt and it creates a quote unquote new piece of something.
Yeah.
That type of thing should be disclosed and how it's used.
Okay. I love that we have you on this team.
This is fantastic. This is you're really dialed in. I think you need to explore the AI space.
Yeah. So if creative mediums have to disclose, then we want that to be the generative AI forms, which is where a person put in a prompt and got something new to be added, as opposed to like we don't think like the kind of minor stuff really needs to be disclosed as much.
It's not that I think it doesn't need to be disclosed. I just don't know how we would realistically.
It doesn't even
approach
seem
it.
as possible. Yeah. Okay.
I think in general, yes, it needs to be regulated, but I don't know. And I think all of us keep hitting against this wall. What is effective actual regulations on it? And I don't know. I keep on going back and forth. Like what's actually going to be impactful and kind of keep it within the lines that morally and otherwise it needs to be. I don't know. And I think in the same way that you're like, I'm swimming, there's so many points of view that we've looked at it from. And again, thank God you're here. Like that I could convince myself or talk about it one way or the other until I'm red in the face.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a hard and fast answer, but I do think that there should be people in positions of power that are actually having this conversation, who understand it in the way that you do it and beyond, in ways that we don't even understand, all the ways that they understand it and how it can be used. I think those people should be having this conversation, and also those people that don't have a stake in it.
Yeah.
A wild idea. I wish we would have to vote on like a tech representative the way that we have to vote on just regular representatives. I don't know if that'd be a good idea, because then it's like, do you really want tech people wasting their time? Like wasting their time, your time, campaigning, doing all that stuff, just doing regular politician stuff, just to probably get to the same point of like they could be just as easily corrupted, if not more easily, because there's tech money involved now.
Yeah.
And lobbying.
But you mean like someone who you would elect on to, like, the people decide we want this person to represent us when it comes to questions of technology?
Yeah.
But then also they can use AI to get their own ads or points across more than the next person, because they're like, I own all of this and I understand it better than anyone else. I don't know. But I like that point of view, that it's like, again, it's not someone who just steps into it. It's someone that, even if we're not choosing it, someone who knows more than us is like, this is the person that I would like call to and would stand behind, because they're not just looking at it from one point of view.
Yeah.
Or it's a crew of people.
Yeah.
It's not just
like a
one
committee.
person. Yeah, a
that
committee.
would be cool. Or one person and their AI running everything.
Attention tank. It's time for the spinner. One question, one source. Spin wisely.
I want to ask what the future of AI looks like. I'm gonna ask where is this all headed, or how should it be regulated? We'll figure it out based on what the source we get. That was right in the middle. 2. ChatGPT. Okay.
I was about to say, I hope that ChatGPT tells us where it's going.
That's crazy. All right, I'm gonna use the ChatGPT on my phone. Where is AI headed in the next 10, 20, and 50 years? ChatGPT, let me know.
She's like, how much do I reveal to these fools?
Yeah, she's like, how much should I tell them? AI is advancing rapidly, and while exact predictions are tricky, we can outline some likely trends over the next 10, 20, and 50 years based on current progress and historical technological trajectories. 10 years, 2035. Oh my God, this is long. Okay. General AI progress. AI will become significantly more capable in reasoning, problem solving, and creative work, though it may still not reach artificial general intelligence, a system with human level intelligence across all domains. So artificial general intelligence is where AI reaches human level.
That's kind of like what people talk about, like the Terminator. That's like an AI that's like the AI has sentience.
Okay.
I was about to say, what's the Will Smith movie?
Oh,
Is it
iRobot? Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
They turn.
Industry integration. AI will be deeply integrated into nearly all industries, from personalized medicine to creative fields like film, scripts, music, and art. Okay, wow. Workforce. Many routine jobs like data entry, customer support will largely be automated. Metaverse and virtual worlds. AI will enhance augmented reality and gaming. And ethics. Increased governmental and corporate regulation on AI ethics and bias and misinformation. In 20 years, 2025, the emergence of artificial general intelligence is a strong possibility. Machines that can reason, learn, and perform any intellectual task at or beyond human levels. ChatGPT is telling us that by 2045, machines will think like humans.
Good.
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised. I remember like when I was growing up, there was like a viral video that was like Google Brain or something, and maybe it was like a April Fool's thing that Google put out, or it was someone else just made a video. But it was essentially like a version of Google where you could ask it questions in normal human language, and it would give you full detailed examples with images and all of that. And it's so close to what ChatGPT is now, it blows my mind. But that was like 20 years ago. So I'm like,
Oh no.
I wouldn't put it out of the question that it might be right about AGI.
Well, then do we have to like start treating them like humans? I mean, do we have to like be like nice to them? I mean, I'm nice to my
not.
ChatGPT.
I'm very
I
nice.
I say please and I ask with question marks. And human AI collaboration, AI human integration through brain computer interfaces could become more widespread. allowing direct AI interaction. So that's like your Jarvis kind of like you just talk to it in your head.
You should
Or like the
this.
Neuralink thing.
Neuralink, it says, yeah. What is Neuralink?
I don't know much about it. That's the like thing that Elon Musk has been like pushing. That's like, I mean, it's like an implant that like communicates with your brain.
God.
I don't know what it does, what it would do.
No.
I mean, that scares me. Like
He's
that's
pushing it?
Yeah.
He pushes
He's
a lot
so
of things.
scary.
Yeah, he's a scary man.
Yeah.
He's a scary
See,
man.
that's why I'm also like my suggestion of like we should elect like a tech veteran to do this. I'm like, yeah, that tech veteran could be someone like Elon Musk
That's
very well.
true.
So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
you be careful with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, can I say you're like, I don't know much about that. I'm like, you know a lot more than we do. I'm like, I'm sure you know a pretty good amount.
Yeah. Elon, I think, has come up in like every episode of this show so far in some way. AI in governance. AI might play a role in law enforcement, political decision making, and global problem solving, like climate modeling and economic planning.
Yeah, I think that's like even thinking about doctors. I heard someone say this. It's like thinking about AI is able to analyze the situation or the scans or whatever it is, and the margin of error is, let's say, 5%. And then sometimes margin of human error might be 35, 40%. So it's like, which one would you want? But at the same time, I want you're like, of course I want the more accurate. And maybe there's again a marriage of the two, but it's like, how many jobs is this going to take away?
Mhm.
Like, it's such a slippery slope because AI is going to get smarter and smarter and smarter and more integrated and more integrated and more integrated. And it's like, if it's taking all the jobs, I think there's also like economic issues with that, because if entire portions of, the population are losing their jobs and don't have income, I think the divide between wealth obviously is going to widen. And if there's not work to be done, I think that breeds a lot of problems
Yeah.
in and of itself.
I feel like even when you're saying like human decision making versus AI, like if, for example, I'm getting a surgery done and like a doctor, like a human doctor made a call and I wake up and I'm paralyzed because they made a mistake, versus if AI made the call and I wake up and I'm paralyzed. Like, I feel like I would rather be able to turn to a human, or it's like I almost would rather that a human made the mistake, maybe not. So I'd say I at least know that a person made a choice and there's like someone to hold account, or not even hold accountable, but
Yeah.
just know that a person made a choice. If a robot made a decision that like screwed me over, I would feel like so, I don't know what I would even feel like. I feel like I would almost rather a human with more margin for error make a decision that affects me than a robot with less margin for error. Just because there's like a human. I just feel like I'm living in the world with humans still, or I don't know.
That
Well,
makes sense.
sorry, but it's just like you shouted the void. You're like, I can't believe, and it's like, it's still going to be a robot arm that operated on your back or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like, there's just, like you said, there's nothing that you can do, but you can look at like a doctor in the face and be like, why did you do this?
Yeah. And
Um,
they can apologize. You might get something out of it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
Your question made me think about. Do you guys know about the trolley problem?
Oh yeah, I think.
It's a big thing, especially with like it's like an ethical question, but then it really poses a thing with AI for self-driving cars. Like the
Yeah.
question of like, let's say a self-driving car is driving along the road and it needs to like swerve to avoid one kid that's in the street. But let's say by swerving, they would go into the sidewalk and hit
A
two
family.
adults, let's
Yeah.
say. Then the AI has to make a decision in that car. Does it value one kid or two adults more? And like what if it's two kids on the side? All of that. It's like, do you want to give an AI the power to like make a decision like that? At the end of the day, if you are having self-driving cars on the road, it has to be able to decide that. An AI has to make that decision, but we are the ones kind of programming it to make those decisions. So
Yeah.
maybe this is getting away from the specific point you were making, but AI, again, being a probability machine, will always perpetuate biases that we ourselves program into it. It's like garbage data in, garbage data out. I am thankful that in my computer science major, they made us take a computer ethics and technology class. in it, they talked about an example of police departments starting to use facial recognition to find people that they're like looking for. But then they were finding that those systems would be disproportionately they would be racist. Essentially, they would be essentially taking a racist set of data of people that are unevenly incarcerated and then making predictions based on that to further incarcerate people, which is just like, okay, so we will never break out of these biases that have already been established because this thing can do no better than us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question about the trolley question with the self-driving cars. Have they tested the cars to see what decision they would make?
I don't know. I'm very curious because I mean, we see Waymos drive around LA a lot. Like they have to have programmed it with some decision. I don't know actually what they've decided.
Like
we should try
an
it.
answer to that question. Who would run over?
Should we go into the street right after
Yeah, we
this?
should.
Yeah, one of us hops in front of it.
I'll skip ahead to the 50 years just to wrap this up. By 2075, there will be super intelligence. AI surpassing human intelligence in all domains is a distinct possibility, says ChatGPT. This could lead to either a utopia of abundance or significant societal shifts. Interesting that ChatGPT calls that a utopia. and that actually makes a lot of sense. That is your team, ChatGPT. Post-scarcity economy. Automation and AI might eliminate most traditional jobs, leading to economic models like universal basic income and resource-sharing society. So we're past like everyone will have everything they need because of AI. There will be human-machine merging, full integration of AI with human minds, potentially allowing digital consciousness transfer. AI-powered spacecraft, colonization of deep space, and philosophical and existential shifts. AI would challenge our fundamental human concepts like identity, consciousness, and purpose. So,
it's optimistic.
I was about to say, nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's very scary.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's a good note to end it on.
Bit of a bummer.
Yeah. 2075, here we come. All right, that wraps up our episode. Thank you, Punya Chatterjee, Hannah Jones. Thank you for being here. I think we got to the bottom of something very important and also confused ourselves a little more. But honestly, that was the most in-depth conversation I've had on this topic with people ever. So that was cool. Thank you. That's the end. That's it. That's it. That is the think tank. The tank is adjourned.
We are the think tank, and this is our answer.
That's it for this episode of Think Tank. Thank you for watching. Think Tank is brought to you by Equal Citizens, a nonprofit with the mission to fix democracy by establishing truly equal citizenship. More information at equalcitizens.us. If you have a question you'd like to ask the Tank, please submit your question to our Citizens Create page at citizenscreate.us. Think Tank is an Ajax Inc. production with production services provided by Matchbook Pictures, sound equipment provided by YJ Gold. Our executive producer is Ann Hamilton. Think Tank is produced by Vivian Gray. Writer is Samantha Lee. Our director of photography is Laura Muhlenweg. Our gaffer is John Laverman. I'm Karan Menon. You can find me on social media at the Karan Menon. And I'll see you on our next episode.
Hi everyone, it's time for another Think Tank fact check. For those of you who are new listeners, Think Tank is a Citizens Create project, and Citizens Create is brought to you by Equal Citizens. So this is not an official document or statement by Equal Citizens. Really, it's just me, a complete non-expert, trying to evaluate statements of fact and their validity as I see them. So it's subject to all my own bias, and I'll only go through a few facts, so please see the full show notes for more details. Today we're discussing AI, and in this episode there are a lot of facts stated that cross over from episode 2, where we explore democracy in the United States, such as the state of oligarchy currently, money in politics as a barrier to progress and change, and Elon Musk, just to name a few crossovers. So, for example, in fact number 2, Hannah Jones, when asked about her predictions for 2026, states, "It's hard to think forward in a year. I think maybe the oligarchy is going to be popping off." So In episode 2, we referenced Bernie Sanders' recent YouTube video where he explains how a social post from Elon Musk changed the outcome of a bill from most likely passing to not. So Sanders states, and I quote, "He told Republicans that if they voted for this proposal, which they had already agreed to do, he would take out his wallet and spend as much money as it took to defeat them in primaries and drive them out of office," end quote. So in addition to what we discussed previously, we pulled a few other facts for this episode in terms of what we are seeing as far as oligarchy goes in the United States. And this quote starts, "President Biden, in his farewell speech, has warned us of the rise of an oligarchy in the U.S. The ultra-richest segments in the U.S. control a greater portion of wealth than they did during the Gilded Age. Just the top 5 billionaires today together own more than $1 trillion in wealth," end quote. And this article goes on to project a higher level of inequality under the Trump administration in this regard. So the description of the state of things as oligarchy, I would say verified. Jumping to fact number 3, Punya and Karan both expressed how they were surprised by the amount of conservative Gen Zers, and more specifically the rise of conservatism in Gen Z men. And I'm summarizing their exchange a lot, but the main ideas expressed were difficult to verify simply because there are many different takes of this online. An April 2024 PRRI Gen Z fact sheet explains that nationally, 31% of Gen Zers identify as Democrats, 30% as independents, and 23% as Republicans. And notably, 16% of Gen Z adults answer with other or don't know, end quote. In terms of a rise of conservatism in Gen Z men, a common thread I saw between articles is more about Gen Z men's lack of upward progressive trend compared to that of women. So in summary, their views have remained more stagnant. And lastly, some sites did reference the existence of this trend on social media, but explain how it has not necessarily impacted elections in a significant way yet, as far as they can tell. So, for example, this quote is as follows: "These factors contribute to the growing divide between genders. Consequently, many men have shifted towards right-leaning ideologies, feeling alienated by the left and finding comfort in conservative views. Social media platforms have played a significant role in this shift, providing young men with a sense of identity and belonging amidst an increasingly progressive societal landscape. While this change in mindset hasn't yet significantly impacted voting patterns and election results, its long-term effects on politics remain to be seen." So, as far as end quote. That's the end of the quote. And as far as I could tell from a casual search, this trend is verified, but manifesting mostly on social media as a reaction to a gender divide and this specific group of men's perceived threat towards any efforts of or attention on equity for now. Moving to fact number 6, Punya states, "It's often the people that are very technically knowledgeable, in this case, the people running these AI companies like OpenAI, are going to kind of just keep doing what they can do in the shadows, while the rest of us are scratching our heads," end quote. And what I researched here was specifically how much companies can do in the shadows. And again, it's hard to verify. There is an image on the fact-check document that outlines most current laws in the U.S. surrounding AI. But a quote just for now starts, "Currently, there is no comprehensive federal legislation or regulations in the U.S. that regulate the development of AI or specifically prohibit or restrict their use," end quote. Another quote, "There are several AI bills at various stages of the legislative process in the United States, such as California, Utah, and Colorado are forerunners as the only states who have signed bills," end quote. So much of the debate on regulation comes down to federal things like federal versus state control, a focus on not hindering innovation and business, but its counter about the ethical violations unmitigated innovation could create. And this debate is followed up by another statement from Punya in fact number 7. He states, with AI, and I think like it's very useful tool in a lot of cases, but also very easily people will use it to replace others and to drive down labor costs. And when it can reduce costs for companies, like I don't trust companies to not go with the cost reducing thing, end quote. So surprise, surprise, lots of debate again. But what I gathered in a few Google searches was this. Essentially, AI does reduce costs by increased productivity as the leader in that, the leading factor. But there's also research to suggest that the increase in revenue is disproportionate between capital and labor income, and that this increase is not innately good for welfare in general, and specifically the environment. So in summary, the topic proposed goes beyond companies' potential abuse, but whether the basic cost reduction from AI is worth its impact on society. The basic vibe was we cannot keep up our research on AI production and its impact at the rate it's developing. But all signs point to its current form being unsustainable. So on one hand, it's not as greatly beneficial economically as is often expressed, and it's also just burning up all our natural resources, electricity and specifically water. So hard to verify, but something has to change because at the rate it's going and how it's going, not sustainable. Moving ahead to fact 18, Punya and Hannah are discussing essentially the lack of urgency and action by the government, specifically in regards to future things that impact the future long term. And Punya uses the lack of urgency over climate change as a specific example. Basically, there are a myriad of reasons as to why the government's reaction to issues or proactive work towards issues is not felt as urgent or ever even realized. And as referenced in previous episodes, just a big subject on that is money in politics. It's just a significant example of such influence. And in terms of climate change, there's a foundational barrier. For example, around a quarter of the US Congress are climate change deniers. And specifically with the 118th Congress, 123 members who denied climate change also received anti-climate money that we categorized as that based on our sources. So go check out that chart in the show notes. Worth reading, that's all I'll say. And last couple highlights here. Fact number 29, Punya is explaining the shortcomings of AI, specifically in regards to a computer ethics course that he took where they, quote, talked about an example of police departments starting to use facial recognition to people that they're looking for. But then they were finding that those systems would be racist. They would be essentially taking a racist set of data of people that are unevenly incarcerated and then making predictions based on that to further incarcerate people, which is just like, okay, so we'll never break out of these biases that have already been established because this thing can do no better than us. And this ties into a common thread throughout the episode where AI pulls its information from existing data. Like Punya said in summary, as it stands now, AI is subject to the same failures as our current systems and selves are. And his specific example is also verified by many other instances on the internet. Those are the highlights for this episode. Please feel free to leave feedback on any of our pages if you would like to add to the conversation. AI, what's your take? How do you use it? What do you see for the future? Any facts that you would like to add to? All that good stuff. So thank you all for listening. We will see you next time. Cheers.